The gallows creaked in the gray yard, but a silent rider waited beyond the gate, reins in one hand, pardon in none. Dawn murmured across Perdition Flats, light as a beggar's hand. In the jail yard, Ada Lane, ankles chained, wrists raw, watched the scaffold take shape like a bad dream being memorized plank by plank. She had not slept. Sleep belonged to futures, and the judge said hers ended at sunrise. Murder of a rail baron's son, they claimed, gun still warm in her palm. No jury lingered over why the baron's son had cornered her in the freight shed. Verdict carved itself in a half day, hanged till dead. Sheriff Dunn yawned behind a steam-frosted window. Two deputies hammered cross-beam bolts, boots thudding on frozen turf. Crows perched along the yard fence, each black feather shining as if oiled for funeral. Whispers seeped through the pickets, townsfolk betting whether she'd scream when the trap dropped. Ada wouldn't. She'd already spent her last voice cursing the judge, then saving a shred for memory. Outside the palisade, a lone cowboy dismounted. He wore no badge, no spurs that chimed, just trail dust on a duster coat and a Winchester strapped across his back. His horse, cold, dark, and broad-chested, breathed mist in patient clouds. Townspeople stepping from the saloon paused. Stranger rode in silent, kept his hat low. Stranger tied horse at the hitch rail, but stayed close enough for a swift remount. A wary hush clung to him like second skin. He crossed the street toward the jail, ignoring murmurs. Sheriff Dunn met him on the threshold, hand on revolver butt. The cowboy tipped his hat, passed a folded sheet, one half of a cattle ledger, the other half a writ signed by the territorial governor. Dunn unfolded, squinted. Anger furrowed jowls, yet ink was ink. The note offered no pardon, only authorization to transfer prisoner to Fort Radigan for retrial. Dunn spat. Reckon this too late. Ropes near tight. Cowboy's eyes stayed shadowed. Papers dated yesterday. Sunrise grace. Dunn chewed the words, then called deputies off the scaffold. Boards clattered. Crows lifted, cawing. Ada, shackled to a post, blinked hard against new glare. Execution paused by stranger's scrap. Chains clicked. Deputy Ward unlocked ankle irons, muttering. Ada's knees nearly buckled from sudden lightness. She studied the cowboy, jaw stubbled, eyes the color of river ice. He did not look at her, only at the sheriff signing release. Name, Ward grumbled. Cowboy answered, Jonah Creed. Creed reclaimed the parchment, tucked it inside coat. Sheriff huffed. You'll answer if she vanishes. Barron's boys got long rifles. Jonah guided Ada to the gate without a word. The crowd parted, a seam of rumor and hooded sympathy. Someone spat near her boot. Another whispered, Run, girl. She didn't run. She couldn't outrun rumor. Out past Livery, fog crawled from river flats, swirling like milk into coffee. Jonah mounted, offered a hand. Ada hesitated. Last hand reached had meant a trap. Still, Gallows waited. Behind. She grasped his wrist. Fingers calloused, pulse steady. He pulled her astride. She perched side saddle behind saddlebags, chains clinking like brittle bells. He nudged the horse, a silent cue. The animal stepped into fog with the grace of old ghosts. No spur, no whisper. Town faded to silhouettes. Gallows beams dissolved in mist. Ada shivered, not from cold but from sudden unowned breath in her lungs. They rode without speech. Frost-brittle grass crunched under hooves, each sound muffled by white vapor. Ada held saddlehorn, wrists still cuffed. After a mile, Jonah stopped at Creek Bend. He dismounted, withdrew an iron key, unlocked cuffs, tossed them into current where water gurgled ice. Ada flexed blood-starved hands, confusion jarring. Why? She rasped. Jonah tied bandana over the horse's eyes, so Beast wouldn't see the cliff he knew ahead. No retrial, he said, voice low gravel. Papers blank under governor's seal. He lifted her down, pointed southeast where fog split under pale sun. Trail splits. Walk 2 miles. Find a miner's shack. Stove. Food. Wait 3 days. He pressed a crumpled envelope into her palm. Inside, train fare and a folded note. Look for Lydia Jameson in Cheyenne. She stitches new names. Ada tried to shape gratitude. Throat closed. her life now perched on ragged edge between gallows and trust. Wind rattled winter stems as if time hurried. Jonah stepped back, swung into saddle, removed bandana, horse turning north toward hills. She watched until fog swallowed both. Behind, creek carried her shackles south, rattling against stone like lost verdicts. Ada turned east, limping on cold dead feet, each step borrowing from dawn's fragile promise. Fog peeled away in thin ribbons as Ada Lane limped east. With every step, pins of fire stabbed her half-numb feet. Boot soles had worn through months ago in jail yard pacing. She gripped Jonah Creed's envelope as if it contained not tickets but marrow. The crinkled corner scratched her palm, a steady ache she used to mark the distance back to the gallows. Somewhere behind, the scaffold crew likely cursed wasted lumber. Somewhere ahead waited a shack, a stove, perhaps the first warmth not rationed by a guard. Sagebrush emerged from mist like crouched animals, each draped in glistening beads. A meadowlark trilled, sound so mundane it nearly undid her. She bit the inside of her cheek and kept moving. At the creek crossing, she paused. Current tugged her cuffs downstream, little iron fish disappearing between stones. She knelt, cupped water, rinsed dried blood from chafed wrists. The icy burn reminded her she was alive by one stranger's gamble. An hour later, she reached a spur of shale that formed a half-moon bluff. Beneath its lip crouched the shack Jonah promised. One room, sod roof, stovepipe tilting. The door sagged off hemp hinges, yet inside smelled of cedar ash and fresh biscuits. Someone had been here within a day, Jonah himself, prepping haven. She swallowed suspicion, entered. A stack of firewood, flint, half-sack of beans, coffee tin, 2 blankets patterned Apache style. On the rough plank table lay a canteen and a note scrawled in fine hand. Wait the storm. Follow railroad grade after third sunrise. Trust the seamstress. No signature, but a single pressed sage blossom in place of a name. Ada traced the petals, breath hitching. She eased onto the bunk, blanket still warm, as if his body heat lingered. Sleep ambushed her like a kind outlaw. She woke to faint hoofbeats. Twilight had slipped the window shutter ajar. Blue hour falling. Instinct screamed silence. She rolled from bunk, heart hammering. Voices drifted. 2 men arguing near the well. She edged to a knothole. Bounty leader in bandaged sleeve, revolver drawn. Beside him, a bearded scout sniffing ground like a tracker dog. Fresh prints, the scout muttered. Barefoot woman stopped here, leader spat. Creed's horse headed north, but he ain't fooling me. Search inside. Ada scanned the room, nowhere to hide but behind the stove. Too small. She grabbed the flint and beans, crammed them into her satchel, then slipped out back through a split board. Frost stung soles, but adrenaline shook off pain. She crawled beneath thorny sage and belly slid downhill toward the dry creek bed. Door hinges shrieked. Boots thumped floorboards. She pictured her mapless future burning each minute they stayed. At creek bed, she found a discarded picket stake, snapped it free. Makeshift cane, makeshift club. Breath iced lungs. She tucked behind a boulder as the scout's lantern beam skated the slope. He descended coughing, muttering about cold air. At 10 paces, Ada rose, stake gripped white knuckle. He froze, eyes wide at apparition in torn green. She slammed the stake into his lantern. Glass exploded, oil fire searing his sleeve. He howled, rolling in sand to smother flame. Ada limped off, ditching uphill behind junipers. Gunshot cracked. Bounty leader at shack doorway. Bullet whined past trunk. She crashed through brush until darkness swallowed ridgeline. Footing vanished. She tumbled into gulch, twisting ankle anew, world spinning. When she could breathe, night pinned her under stars sharp as gallows nails. Above, riders cursed, arguing over directions. She crawled deeper along wash, knees shredding. Pain threatened blackout, but fear stitched consciousness tight. After a mile, the gulch leveled into open flats. Far horizon glimmered faint orange. Railroad survey fires, perhaps. She limped that way, each step a vow. At first light, she collapsed beneath telegraph poles not yet wired, only posts marking the grade. Steam whistle echoed far north. Freight line. She tore open Jonah's envelope. 2 train vouchers, both Cheyenne, and Lydia's address scribbled in looping ink. But another slip, a folded map of tributaries with a charcoal X at their junction. Safe draw, hidden water, no path marked, just gut compass between mesas. Did Jonah intend her to detour? Why? Wynne answered with dust. She reasoned, Rail Baron's sons controlled Cheyenne lines. Too risky. Hidden water promised cover. She set east again, following sun in the faint scent of pinon smoke. By second dusk, she reached the junction. 2 dry gullies marrying into narrow canyon. Under mesquite, she found a canvas lean-to, cold fire ring, hoof prints of Creed's silent horse. He had waited, but bounty men forced plans gears faster. Footprints led deeper into Slot Canyon. She followed by moonlight. 50 yards in, ravine opened to rock basin, holding a pool-lit turquoise by mineral glow. Underground spring exposed. Beside it, Jonah kneeled, rinsing blood from cheek where bullet had grazed. He turned at her stumble. Relief flickered across that river ice gaze. Shack compromised, she rasped. He gestured, already knowing. Beneath blanket lay supplies. Flour, jerky, spare boots. He produced small file, shaped her splint anew, wrapped ankle tight. No words about gallows or bounty. Only, water's clean. Drink. She knelt, cupped spring, tasted metal sweet life. Tears spilled without shame. Jonah watched silent, as though measuring if she still believed in dawn. Finally he spoke. Tracks muddy. They'll find canyon. He pointed into fissure beyond pool, a crawl space shimmering faint. Old lava tube. Runs 3 miles to Salt Widow Valley. Coal train switch there. Easy hop. Ada nodded, though ankle throbbed. Jonah handed her a stub pencil sketch of tunnel bends, each turn marked by bird glyph. I clear false trail. Join at far mouth, he said. He hesitated, removed his hat, a gesture of trust, and pressed folded badge into her palm. A Marshall star. Edges worn. Used to mean something, he murmured. Now only buys questions. She tucked it against her chest. He lifted saddle, mounted, guided the cold dark horse back toward canyon mouth. She watched until hoof echoes merged with night wind. Then satchel strapped, heart steeled, Ada slid into the lava tube's breath, alone but for pulse drumming hope against stone. The lava tube swallowed Ada in a single grit-choked inhalation. She crouched, lantern stub clenched between teeth, one hand skimming the left wall for Jonah's charcoal bird marks. Basalt glittered with mica like distant constellations. The tunnel air held an iron tang that made lungs taste pennies. Every shuffle echoed twice, once ahead, once in the memory of Gallows she'd outrun. 50 paces in, the ceiling dipped so low she had to belly crawl, splint dragging. The lantern guttered. She paused, cupped the flame, feeding it pine pitch from her pocket. Light flared, casting long, wing-shaped shadows. Jonah's glyphs, one at each branching. She chose the passage whose bird pointed upward, trusting his silent cartography. Her mind measured distance in breaths. 3,000 paces should equal 3 miles if tunnel ran straight, but lava seldom obeyed straight lines. Twice she stopped to pencil quick notations on her map edges, turning fear into coordinates. At pace 700, the floor slanted sharply. Loose pumice rolled beneath knees. She slid, stifled a cry, landed on an ancient timber bridge spanning a chasm unseen, until lantern glow revealed a throat of darkness 15 feet deep. Bridge boards looked one storm away from dust. She tested them, wood flexed but held. Halfway across, an echoing clatter behind made her freeze. A stone dislodged? Or boot? She snuffed the lantern, heart baying. Silence. Then faint clinks of spurs meeting rock. Bounty hunters had found an entrance faster than Jonah predicted. Ada inhaled through clenched teeth, finished the span by memory, fingers grazing wall until she felt the next glyph. A bird with beak open. Jonah's note. Beak means climb. She wedged lantern into a crevice, struck match, saw a rickety ladder of driftwood staves hammered long ago into a skylight vent. Above, dawn-tinted basalt rim pale. She started up. Each rung squealed. Halfway, silhouettes spilled into tunnel mouth beyond bridge. 3 men, lantern beams jittering. She's up the vent, the scout's voice echoed. Ada hauled herself faster. A rifle shot barked. Splinters of ladder whined past her cheek. Another rung, then sunlight struck her face like open slap. She rolled onto desert gravel, gasping. A second shot cracked. Bullet hissed overhead. She shoved a rock over the vent, blocking line of sight, then crawled behind boulder. Below, men cursed. Ladder groaning as weight climbed. Ada ripped a shard of mirror from satchel, a mapping tool once, angled sunlight into vent. A blinding beam stabbed downward. Shouts turned to howls. She heard ladder snap, bodies tumble wood and curses. A final echo of pain, then quiet. Not waiting, she hobbled east. The ground leveled into broad plain where narrow-gauge tracks stitched horizon. Soot from coal fires streaked rising thermals. Salt Widow Valley switchyard. A lone brakeman idled by a boxcar, wiping iron dust off gloves. Ada approached, presenting Jonah's folded Marshall star. "Need passage," she rasped. He eyed the badge, then her torn dress, bleeding ankle. "Boxcars headed Cheyenne. Mail run. I never saw you." He tipped his cap, slid open door. Inside smelled of oats and axle grease, safer than heaven. She climbed, collapsed on burlap sacks. Brakeman slid the door almost shut, leaving sliver of daylight. Train hissed readiness. Ada pressed cloth to ankle, still bleeding from ladder splinters. Pain blurred edges of thought. Where was Jonah? His promise, meet at far mouth. Perhaps he diverted riders. Whistle shrieked, cars lurched. Through cracks, she saw 3 horses racing, switchyard edge. Bounty squad -1. Leader's bandaged sleeve flapped like broken wing. They fired at engine. Sparks bounced off boiler. Engineer shoved throttle. Wheels bit rail. Gunmen paralleled boxcar. A shadow vaulted from service road. Jonah, duster ripped, knife in hand, sprinting beside train. He grabbed a rung, swung, landed on ladder 6 cars behind. Bounty leader swerved horse, matching speed. Jonah ducked rifle muzzle, scrambled rooftop, sprinting forward across shaking boards. Ada's pulse roared louder than engine. She dragged sacks to door gap, braced. Jonah reached her car roof, slid down side ladder as bullets stitched metal above. She flung door wide, he leapt, slammed into oats, rolled. She yanked door almost shut. A bullet punched through plank, lodging in beam. Train gained speed. Horses fell behind. Muzzle flashes fading. Jonah lay panting, blood stripe across temple. Ada tore sleeve scrap, pressed wound. He winced but smiled tight. False trail worked till ladder snapped, he whispered. She laughed, a crack sound. You always carry sage blossoms? He shrugged. Spirits like gifts. Moonlight flickered through slats as train tunneled sage flats. Safe for breath at last. Hours later, engine slowed near water tower. Jonah eased door wide. Empty desert, no riders. They jumped, landing in silver sand. Boxcar clattered into night, gone. Ahead, telegraph shack bore sign Cheyenne, 22 miles. An old buckboard waited, donkey asleep in traces. Jonah found oats, scribbled IOU for rancher, and they climbed aboard. Ada, exhausted, leaned against him, envelope crinkling between. Next sunrise, he said, voice soft. We find Lydia. She managed a nod, lids heavy. Under scattered stars, donkey plodded toward faint glow of city lights. Each lamp a question about second chances and stitched names. Behind, desert breeze scattered broken ladder rungs and bounty curses across lava tube. Ahead, new roads waited. Gravel, rail, maybe one that never ends in rope. The donkey reached Cheyenne's outskirts just as dawn lifted the horizon's lid. Stockyard smoke, coal ash, 100 telegraph wires strung like harp strings above frost silver prairie. Ada smelled hot yeast from a bakery, kerosene from switch lanterns, horse sweat, all mingled into the living stink of freedom. Jonah guided the buckboard behind a hay freight, ducking his head beneath the brim. At the liver yard, he helped Ada down. Her ankle throbbed where ladder splinters still nested, but the splint Jonah had reshaped held firm. A stable hand stared at their torn coats. Jonah flicked a silver dollar, enough to hush curiosity and buy oats for the patient donkey. Cheyenne's main street blazed awake. Newspaper boys hawking headlines about silver strikes, soldiers trotting to Fort D. Russell, and 2 Pinkerton posters newly pasted outside the telegraph office. Ada's breath caught. Top sheet showed an inked likeness of Ada Lane, wanted for murder and escape. Right behind fluttered a reward notice for ex-deputy Marshal Jonah Creed, deserter. She tugged Jonah's sleeve and pointed. His jaw tightened, but he simply said, "We're right on schedule." They ducked into a maze of back alleys, past laundry yards and lamp repair shops, until Jonah stopped before a millinery storefront marked Jameson Alterations and Fancy Goods. Gorgeous hats crowded the window, distracting passers-by. Jonah rapped twice, paused, rapped once. A slender woman with sun-streaked ginger hair unlocked the door. Sharp, assessing eyes swept over Ada's bleeding ankle and Jonah's bandaged temple. "Lydia," he said. "You're late and leaking," Lydia Jameson replied, voice soft but iron-laced. She latched the door, drew curtains, led them through bolts of lace into a back room smelling of steam and ink. Ada noted a treadle machine atop a carpenter's bench, and beside it, a tiny printing press no bigger than a hat box. Blank identity forms hung to dry like ghost laundry. "Sit." Lydia produced a basin, carbolic, tweezers. As she cleaned Ada's wound, she spoke without lifting her gaze. "Pinkerton wires hit town at midnight. Banker Hughes doubled the purse. Scouts at every depot. You have maybe 8 hours." Ada tried to thank her. Lydia waved a hand. "Gratitude later. First, names." She tore a linen swatch, dabbed iodine. "I can sew you a new dress, but a name's the tightest seam." Jonah laid the folded badge on the bench. "Marshal Starr still buys questions. Need it gone." Lydia covered the badge with a square of velvet, as if tucking away a gun. "We'll unmake the law before dawn." She set to work. Scissors hissed, cloth flew. Jonah fetched coffee from the coal stove, watching the window's covered glass for shapes. Ada slipped into a calico dress Lydia adjusted in real time, tucking torn lace under fresh pleats. Hair darkened with walnut dye, skin dusted with rice powder to dull the prison pallor. When Ada turned to the mirror, a stranger blinked back, chin higher, freckles disguised. Lydia spread forged documents. Evangeline Hart, teacher, destination Omaha, train ticket Midnight Express. For Jonah, Daniel Crow, livestock buyer. She even produced a pair of rimless spectacles to soften his hawk stare. Jonah slipped them on. The effect startled Ada, a kinder ghost overlaying the gunfighter. A sharp knock froze the room. Lydia whisked papers into a false drawer, her motion so fluid it seemed rehearsed. Front door latch rattled. A deputy voice barked, "Shop inspection!" Lydia glided out, leaving Ada and Jonah breath-held in the sewing room gloom. Through the cracked door, they heard ledger pages flipping, hat boxes opening. Lydia's voice floated calm, airy with shop-girl chatter. "Looking for velvet or violators, deputy? Patterns come in next week." The deputy growled about fugitives. Lydia feigned faintness. A clatter of boxes, dramatic gasp. The deputy, flustered, begged pardon and retreated. Door shut. Lydia returned, cheeks flushed but triumph bright. Boys crumble when faced with hat sizes. Jonah lifted curtain a thumb's width. The deputy conferred with 2 riders wearing blue Pinkerton coats. They split, one toward depot, one to telegraph office. Time shortened. Lydia unlocked a trap door under the treadle. Passage to riverfront. She handed Ada a bundle. Spectacles, gloves, and a satin ribbon. Teacher from St. Louis works best if no one sees wrist scars. To Jonah she gave a derby hat, minus drawstring. Vest pockets hide bullets better than belt. They slipped into the crawl space. Lydia led until tunnel met a coal chute opening onto alley gloom. She stopped, pressed envelope of small bills into Ada's palm. "Cheyenne to Omaha, switch lines, then north. Burn tickets after conductor punches." She squeezed Ada's hand, eyes flaring with something like promise. Stay alive. Outside, street lamps flickered awake, gas jets buzzing. Jonah guided Ada along the river esplanade where freight barges groaned. Across tracks, the depot swarmed. Soldiers, families, 2 Pinkertons comparing posters under an arc lamp. Jonah calculated, board from freight yard West End, slip into Pullman as train gathers steam, They waited behind crates until whistle shrilled. Locomotive hissed, steam fogging lamplight. Passengers filed, Pinkertons checked faces. Jonah guided Ada around baggage cars, up a maintenance ladder to the dark gap between mail coach and coal tender. They slid through vestibule door just as engine chuffed. Inside dim corridor, they exhaled together. Ada adjusted spectacles, heart still galloping. Jonah whispered, "North Platte Junction, then off." Ada nodded. She unfolded Lydia's banknotes, enough for miles of fresh horizon. But footsteps approached. Conductor's lantern bobbed. They ducked into linen closet, breaths tangled. Lantern slid past, then stopped. Door jerked open. Bounty leader stood there instead of conductor. Bandage off, eye blazing. He shoved revolver barrel into Jonah's ribs. "Tickets, thieves," he hissed. Ada's mind raced. Carriage layout, conductor likely in next car. She scanned for weapon, only folded irons and pressed sheets. Jonah subtly lifted his spectacles, as if removing civility. Ada clutched linen strip, heart pounding. Suddenly the train lurched over a switch, jolting all three. Jonah used the sway, knocking revolver upward. Shot tore closet roof. Ada whipped sheets around Bounty Man's arm, twisting. Lantern toppled, oil pooling fire. Jonah headbutted the assailant, grabbed gun. Ada yanked flaming lantern into corridor, screaming, "Fire!" Passengers hurdled seats. Pinkertons rushed forward. Smoke funneled. Jonah dragged the stunned bounty hunter to rear vestibule, clipped wrist to handrail with storage lock. Flames licked linen pile. Whistle shrieked emergency. Brakeman cranked air valve. Train screeched. Amid chaos, Jonah pulled Ada onto coal tender catwalk. They leapt into star-cold air, rolling down ballast embankment as sparks rained overhead. The locomotive groaned to full stop a quarter-mile beyond. Silhouettes swarmed, buckets passing. Jonah and Ada lay hidden under sage until commotion pivoted forward. When noise ebbed, they limped north, moon guiding. Creek water flashed silver ahead, the state line river. Ada pressed hand to chest, feeling new papers unburnt. "Name's still ours?" she whispered. Jonah nodded, though spectacles lost in jump. "Names hold," he said. Behind them burning linens doused. Ahead, unknown border glimmered. They waded knee-deep, cold, purging smoke taste. On far bank, prairie stretched silent. Jonah tapped badge-shaped bruise on chest where revolver hit. "One sunrise more," he said. Ada caught his hand. They walked into grass tall enough to erase tracks, carrying midnight-sown identities toward whatever dawn still owed them. Frost crunched under every step once they cleared the river grass. The Platte lay behind them, milky in moonglow, its whisper swallowed by wide Nebraska silence. Ada Lane, now Evangeline Hart on Lydia's ink, balanced along a faint cattle trail while Jonah Creed, spectacles lost but gaze unclouded, kept pace half a stride ahead. They carried no lantern, starlight alone drew pale stripes across the sod. Somewhere east, a locomotive whistle sobbed, muffled by distance. Westward, an owl called once, then folded the night shut. They walked till boot leather softened from dew, then found an abandoned sheepfold, low stone walls, tumbled gate. Jonah kindled a hand-sized fire with dry thistle. Sparks climbed, died. Ada stripped blood-stuck linen from her arm. He poured canteen water, cleaned the crease. No talk, words felt expensive in brittle dark. Dawn seeped peach into brittle clouds. From the fold's rise, they watched buckskin hills roll toward Wyoming line. North lay a freighter route curling to Fort Hall. South, a wagon trace rumored safe only at midday. Jonah pointed northwest. "Rail won't touch that ridge 2 years yet," he said. Less iron meant fewer eyes. Mid-morning found a sod-roof stage stop long deserted. Inside, a rusted stove, 2 horse collars, 1 tin mirror cracked like dried clay. Jonah pried collar leather free, crafted boot patches for Ada. Her ankle thanked him by steadying. He left badge bruise alone. Let it remind ribs what law sometimes costs. They moved again at dusk, sheltering in cottonwood hollows when prairie opened too wide. 2 nights, 3. Each time Jonah studied the horizon before sleep, listening as if ancestors might stampede across stars. Ada learned to mimic. She felt wind angles, noted rabbit trails, etched mental maps that belonged to quiet, not ink. On the fourth dawn, they reached a box canyon valley where creek water flicked sunlight under quaking aspens. A single homestead occupied the far slope. Small barn, sod house chimney, coughing oak smoke. Jonah raised hand, peace sign. A woman stepped out, elderly, half Shoshone by beadwork on her dress, Winchester resting casual in crook of arm. She scanned strangers, then lifted 2 tin cups in greeting. Inside the sod house smelled of choke cherry jam. The woman named herself Wren Talbot, widow, weaver, self-declared enemy of newspapers. She examined Ada's ankle, clucked, then pointed to Lumen Corner. Threads of sunflower-dyed wool stretched in slow sky pattern. She said weaving binds wandering spirits, asked if Ada would weave one line. Ada wove a single pass of weft, the thread wobbling but true. Wren nodded. Stays good. She offered spare loft till strength grew. That night creek frogs rasped lullabies through clay flue. Jonah sat on porch rail, carving a small cedar horse. Ada joined, quilt round shoulders. Safe? She asked. He shrugged toward the southeast where Cheyenne lamps shimmered faint his memory. Pinkertons read timetables, not footpaths. He handed her the carving. Tiny silent horse like the one that led her from Gallows yard. Days stretched into stitchwork of small labors. Jonah felled beetle-killed pine, split shakes, re-roofed Wren's barn. Ada hauled creek water, stirred dye vats, memorized loom rhythm until thread tension matched heartbeat. Wren taught her root salves. Jonah showed her to fire a colt without closing eyes. Hanun spoke of Cheyenne flames or banker blood money, yet each dusk Jonah checked wind for hoof grit. Summer's edge approached. Alfalfa scented each breath. One afternoon a rider came, U.S. mail courier, saddle froth rimmed. He passed a letter to Wren, then galloped on. Wren slit seal, raised brow, handed it to Ada. Lydia's cursive danced across. Pinkerton pursuit cooled. Hughes indicted for fraudulent claims. Reward rescinded. Your name clear beyond state lines. Right when mountains bloom. Ada's lungs emptied, filled different. She passed letter to Jonah. His shoulders eased just perceptibly. That night they burned Ada's wanted poster. Jonah had retrieved it off Cheyenne wall during linen fire chaos. Ink blistered, lifted into dusk like moths. When last ember died, Jonah produced a folded governor's writ, the blank one that saved her at Gallows Gate. He held it over flame, hesitated. Ada stopped his hand. Keep, she whispered. Proof dawn can lie for good. He slipped it into coat lining. With risk receding, talk turned to after. Wren suggested claiming creek plot. Government offered homestead patents for 30 cents an acre if filed before harvest moon. Jonah eyed horizon as if measuring fence lines. Ada traced creek meanders into blank ledger. First map she'd inked since Canyon. They walked valley, counting steps, choosing where to plant gooseberry bushes come spring. Ada's ankle allowed near-normal stride. The stick became hiking staff, not crutch. Storm season arrived sudden. One evening, black anvils banked west. Jonah boarded barn windows. Ada stored loom yarn in oilskin. Lightning scrawled mountains. Thunder drummed old Gallows cadence. Wind reeled open cabin door. Ada stepped onto porch, rain needling face. She no longer feared rope shadows. Storm smelled only of clean starts. When clouds emptied stars, Jonah joined her. He held 2 tin cups of Wren's choke cherry whiskey. Toast. No words, just clink. He removed battered spectacles, the disguise never needed now, dropped them into pocket. Ada unpinned walnut-dyed braid, letting hair drink starlight. He brushed stray strand behind ear. She leaned, kissed the cedar horse carving, dangling lanyard on his vest. Then kissed him, slow, certain, no gallows near. Autumn stamped Valley gold. They filed claim at remote land office. Ada signed Evangeline Hart, hand steady. Clerk stamped seal. Jonah signed below as witness. No alias. Badge wound still bruised but healing. They bought seeds, nails, 2 milk goats, a second-hand press pump. Winter would test them, but rope would not. In first snow, Ada wove blanket of sunflower yellow and canyon red. She stitched 1 cedar horse beside a scaffold crossed out. Jonah built cradle from pine scraps. though no child yet stirred. He said beginnings deserved containers. Wren laughed, called them dreamers. Midwinter dawn, smoke curled from new chimney. Coyotes drifted ridge, uninterested. Ada stood on porch, black shoes finely laced proper, soles creaking on plank he milled. Jonah exited barn, silent horse nuzzling his sleeve, bringing bucket of froth-white milk. They shared steaming cups, watched sun-crowned mesa. His hand found hers, pulse steady, unshackled. Behind them inside doorframe hung the burned-edge writ, framed in leftover loom wood, a relic of wrong ink made right. Next to it, Lydia's letter. Below, Wren's finished tapestry, lines tight as promise. Water and creek gurgled story forward. Rails would one day reach ridge, maybe bring troubles new, but map and road now agreed. No gallows, no bounty, only thread crossing thread in ever-widening cloth. If this five-part ride kept your heart tugging till the final sunrise, tap like, hit subscribe, and share a comment. Which scene or line of thread pulled you deepest into Ada and Jonah's second chance? Your words keep the campfire burning.